A House of Dynamite is out on Netflix, new thriller from Catherine Bigelow, possibly inspired by a similar book called Nuclear War: A Scenario by Annie Jacobsen. Ensemble cast: Idris Elba, Rebecca Ferguson, Gabriel Basso, Jared Harris, Tracy Letts, Anthony Ramos, Moses Ingram, Greta Lee, and Jason Clarke. The film presents a scenario. American radar picks up a nuclear missile heading towards the continental US. They don't know exactly who sent it, only that it originated in the Pacific. Can be North Korea, can be China, can be Russia. They do know it's going to hit Chicago in less than 20 minutes. And we observe the response by the authorities as they scramble to take action. And the film is split into three sections. Each replays the events between the missile being spotted and essentially the moment it reaches its target. Each time with a slightly different perspective going up the chain of command, showing us what their thinking and actions are. The first part is the military analysts who detect the missile and the White House Situation Room. The second, the Deputy Director of NSA and the Army brass, the generals. And finally, the third, the Secretary of Defense in Pentagon, and of course, the President. I thought the movie was fantastic. It's very chilling in terms of how grounded it is and how it exposes potential flaws of the American nuclear response capabilities, namely the flaws being the human component. People hesitate. People don't believe the news at first. They waste time. They argue. They have biases. And crucially, pretty much every person wastes some of the time that they should be spending on helping secure the country as a whole in trying to save or at least talk to their own families. It's also very interesting how in the movie each level up seems to be less competent, less equipped to deal with the situation, or at least has less and less operational know-how to make informed decisions, which does make sense in the real world where people on top are simply less specialized. But it does lead to some very scary conclusions. Now, I've seen a lot of criticism towards the movie's narrative structure and replaying the events three separate times, as well as its open ending. People complained that the first act was the most tense, but then because they knew what was going to happen, they were bored. I couldn't disagree more. I mean, okay, I will grant you that the first part is the most thrilling, but I never found the other two boring because to me that is the entire point of the film, that is the entire premise, to show you completely separately how these events and how the same events and information are viewed by different levels of government. I think editing them all together would, first of all, make that distinction between the levels more blurred. And second, it would make the movie more difficult to follow because it moves quickly and it throws a lot of acronyms and technical terms at the audience. So by having the same sequence of events replayed three times, you sort of get familiar with it, get used to it. And third, I think that the pacing would be weird because you either stretch the 20 minutes into 2 hours, which would definitely be felt by the audience as cheating, or you change the timeline within the story itself, but then that removes the urgency. And as for the ending, I think it works very well for the film. Yes, it is a bit surprising and anticlimactic, but that's because, again, the point of the film is not to show what happens after, how the crisis is resolved or not, but how the people get moving to start hopefully resolving it. And that part is accomplished very well. The production design, editing, sound, and performances are all great. I loved Rebecca Ferguson and Jared Harris especially, but I think a lot of the supporting cast do a great job of playing the mood changes after these people realize the gravity of what is going on. In a lot of those rooms, the conversations immediately go from lighthearted and calm to a sense of foreboding, a sense of utter disaster, and it's mostly just people's expressions and looks. My one point of criticism is something I've talked about a million times already, and I'm sad to have to do it again. The movie was produced by Netflix and looks like a typical Netflix film, which means every shot has flat lighting, boring focus, pedestrian framing, flat color palette, because again, Netflix mandates the types of cameras and lenses to be used so that the films that they produce can look okay on the small screens of mobile phones and tablets, which means that then these films have very few interesting things going for them visually that would be visible on a larger screen, which is especially said in an otherwise great film like this one, that it suffers from being completely bland in terms of its visuals. Still, I found it engrossing and chilling, and for fans of political thrillers, I think it's a great watch.